Welcome back. It is Tuesday, and on Tuesdays we discuss all things health related. And this morning we'll be unpacking what complementary feeding is. Now, this refers to the introduction of solid foods and liquids other than breast milk or infant formula to an infant's diet, typically starting around 6 months of age. Now, it is a crucial period in a child's development because breast milk or formula alone may not provide all the necessary nutrients as the infant grows older. We're now joined in studio by Helvi Negumbo, who's a nutritionist, and she joins us in studio with more details on this. Very good morning to you, Helvi. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, so we're discussing a very important period of an infant's life. Of course, the complementary stage. Talk to us firstly about this complementary feeding stage.
So, as you have also mentioned, it is a complement, so it doesn't necessarily mean that you should now take out the milk aspect from the child diet. So it's very essential to introduce this because just milk alone, whether now be it breast milk or formula milk, is not going to be sufficient for the child's diet anymore. And then it can result into the child being malnourished or not receiving the necessary nutrients that they need. So yes, it is a very important stage that I believe is not really well talked about in our society. Hence now the rising cases of malnutrition in the country.
Very much indeed. Let's get into it. I honestly thought that breast milk was always a wholesome, inclusive nutrient, so to say. But hearing from you that that breast milk is not enough, what are some of the complementary or the key nutrients that a mother or a father should focus on when introducing this complementary feeding stage?
All right, so the main key nutrients that we usually try to identify is vitamins and minerals such as iron. Iron is usually needed to help prevent anemia. It also then helps with the vision of the child. We also have vitamin D. We also have calcium. Calcium then also would then help with the child's development of their bones. It really helps strengthen their bones. There is also other aspects such as zinc. Zinc is essential with mental development. Some minerals such as zinc also helps then with immunity. So even though these are available in milk, it is quite essential to get them from food sources as well. Yes.
What type of food sources are we talking about here?
So your vitamin A and your calcium, most of these are your leafy vegetables. So your legumes, your cabbages, your spinach. So obviously for a child then that means it needs to be pureed or, just
made
often.
finer.
Yes.
Please, fathers, do not feed the whole leaves of lettuce, etc. to the babies.
Yes, not the whole leaf. At least make it into a mixture that is, able to be swallowed by the child depending on the month that they are in. So you can also find it in your dairy products, such as now your milk, your yogurts, your cheeses. But yet again, do not give the child a whole clump of cheese. So if the child is about 8 months, 9 months, that's when you can try with finger foods, depending on if the teeth has started coming in. So it's a mixture of basically vegetables and fruits.
And fruits.
Yes.
In fine form.
In fine form.
Very
depending
much. Or pureed, as you call it, in the baby terminology.
Yes.
All right. Oftentimes, parents it's a very critical period of an infant's life as well, because you may come across allergies, etc., and stuff like that. Talk to us about this period and what parents should look out for.
Okay, so it's very important to introduce food, especially new food, gradually. You want to be able to identify if a child has a specific allergy. So you should introduce a food once at a time in a small amount. So at least once a week you introduce a new food. So some of the signs of allergies can include swelling of the face, mouth, lips, or overall body in general, vomiting, diarrhea, rashes. So when you see these signs, it's very important to then reach out to your health providers to get the necessary help. But sometimes now the resistance of food does not necessarily mean that, especially if it's not an allergy reaction, doesn't necessarily mean that the child should not eat this food. It is actually, according to many studies, it shows that a child needs to be introduced to a specific food even up to 15 times in order for them to be able to continue or build tolerance to eating this food. So the aim is really introduce food once at a time, be very consistent and patient, try as often as you have to. Make sure that you do not feed the child food when they are fussy, because then you are not also creating a good eating environment.
Absolutely.
So these are the little basic things that, parents or caregivers should look out for when trying to introduce new food.
Very much so. The complementary feeding stage typically begins from 6 months. As a parent, how do I know, apart from the infant being 6 months, of course, how do I know that this is the right time to start introducing complementary foods, and also the frequency of it from the onset? How do I, begin?
All right. So many dietitians in the country now, accompanied by the guidelines that were given by WHO, we usually would then advise to not start eating or to not start introducing solids and liquids to a child before they are 12 weeks or not later than 26 weeks. But there are like some cues that you would see if whether it's okay for the child to eat. So if the child is reaching out to food, if the child is able to hold their head up straight, sometimes if you do give the child, let's say, a soft porridge and they're able to swallow and not necessarily spit it out, all of these are the little signs. So over time, you start with smaller portions and then you increase the portions as the time go or according to how old they are.
Yes. Fantastic. So now I've gradually introduced, this complementary foods or solids, if you will. And how do I know that now my child is receiving the necessary nutrients, is receiving enough of these key nutrients here?
All right. So how you would know if your child is receiving the necessary nutrients is to honestly ensure that you give a child a balanced diet. So a balanced diet is a term that we usually throw out there, but then what does it entail? So a balanced diet entails eating a lot of fruits and vegetables because, like I mentioned earlier, it provides a lot of vitamins and minerals that are essential in the different aspects of growing, which can then help with mental development, immunity building, and just also growth itself. Whole grain foods as well would then help with ensuring that the child does get energy because, you do need a lot of energy growing up, and this is a time that these kids are a little bit playful. So you do also then need to introduce whole grain food as it will provide the child with energy. Omega-3 fatty acids as well, which you can find in your proteins, such as now fish, such example salmon, could also really help, as this is a healthy fatty acid for the child as well. And fatty acid is also very important because, fat does also help with insulation as well. So that's quite important. Another key nutrient that is very important is to also introduce liquids, in the child's diet. Even though we do have milk, we want to still give them some liquids in their diet. So juice is a big no-no, as much as we tend to do that. Most of the time, especially in the Namibian community, we provide small juices to the child, which is a big no-no, especially if the child is under 1 year old. It is too rich in sugar, and it takes away the child's appetite. So that's like one of the biggest tips that I would usually give individuals who that have kids. Cut down on sugar. If you're going to introduce juices, at least dilute them. Even though it's written 100%, it is a little bit sugary. So introducing liquids as well is quite important in the diet.
What's important to note is that the complementary feeding is not a supplement. It's not a replacement for breastfeeding still or formula. How important is it that parents maintain, just in closing, that parents maintain a balance between the complementary feeding and, of course, breastfeeding or maintaining the formula?
All right. So as I mentioned earlier, complementary feeding, it's complementing what you already have, which is complementing milk. So if you used to give, a child would feed even up to 5, 6, 7 times a day, depending on, on the child's appetite. So you can then reduce some of these portions to breastfeeding up to 4 times a day, and then introducing the healthier snacks, such as now a pureed pumpkin and so forth. So like I said, it's always easier to look at the cues of your baby, the little cues of the baby. If you see that you used to feed your child every second hour, and after an hour the child seems pretty hungry, then that means it's time to introduce other solid foods. So these are some of the cues to then see if the child is not then just receiving enough from just breast milk alone. But then there are also other components that will help you be able to identify whether it's time to, really indeed introduce complementary food. For instance, if the child is not growing anymore, their growth is rather stunted, which you are able to identify if you do visit your health professionals, because they do have growth charts, which just then also emphasizes the importance of taking your child for regular checkups, especially in their first 1,000 days of life. Yes, but also you would also notice that the baby or the infant rather would have frequent infections. They would have frequent infections because, they are not receiving the necessary nutrients and vitamins to help strengthen their immunity. So frequent infections could also be an indicator that a child, needs more than just breast milk.
Absolutely.
Another indication could be a slow milestones development. So, we usually have these milestones that we give to our child when they are 3 months, when they are 6 months, what are they expected to do? So if the child is also not reaching these milestones, such as walking, crawling, or even sitting by themselves, it could also be a nutrition aspect that is often overlooked.
Helmi, thank you so much for being here and sharing your insights on the complementary feeding stage. Thank you for being with us here.
It was lovely being here.
There you have it. Nutritionist Helvi Negumbo talking to us this morning about complementary feeding, which of course refers to the gradual introduction of solid foods to complement the breastfeeding or formula currently being provided to infants. We continue with more matters. So this is Good Morning Namibia. Do stay with us.